So the 2024 NFL draft is over, which means the countdown to 2025 begins. Yeah. How about that, huh? But anyways, 3 days, 3 nights of draft-related fun, and everybody on Sunday now is kind of recovering. So what is natural here, instead of letting it just flow by, it's time to make a stand and put yourself on the record and say who the biggest winners and losers are, even though you have absolutely no clue. Nobody does for like 3 to 4 years. But sometimes you can tell, and sometimes you do know, right? So that's what I'm here to do, is to come out and give my biggest winners, my biggest losers from the 2024 NFL Draft. And I'll say this, is that I thought there were some clear-cut winners. Some teams that did well just didn't make like the top 5 for biggest winners. Some teams I was like, that's okay. And only a few teams I really look at for varying reasons and saying that they were losers. So it wasn't a horrible performance for a bunch of teams is what I'm pointing to. You'll still get some rant from me. Don't worry about that. But anyways, let's get started and let's talk about the biggest winners. First, I think the city of Detroit. They came out big, they came out strong and loud all 3 days of the draft. Over 700-something thousand people, I think it was. Like just an insane mass of humanity. And that's fantastic and absolutely a big reason why I would want to have no part of actually going to the draft in person. Why the hell would I want to be around 200+ thousand people on a given day? Just me. But Detroit showed out. They put on a great show. But in terms of the actual teams and what they did, the Pittsburgh Steelers. I love their drafting of Troy Fautanu at number 20 and Zach Frazier at 51. Fautanu was mocked in some cases to go a little bit higher than this. But for a Steelers team that needed to address the offensive line, they did that here. Whether he ends up playing tackle or kicking inside the guard, we'll see. I don't think there's much debate about where Zach Frazier is going to play. Their second round pick, he's going to be a center, and he's going to be a pretty damn good one in the league in my opinion. You look for those interior offensive linemen especially that were former wrestlers, and he just plays like a wrestler. He's got a nasty demeanor to him. He can throw people around, just incredible shit. So I love their first 2 picks addressing the offensive line. Roman Wilson, to me, feels like their type of wide receiver. When you talk about the Steelers, one position over the years they've gotten pretty well, and the lineman Swedes excluded, it's wide receiver. And Roman Wilson feels like another one of their type of Steeler wide receivers, going to fit in very nicely. The big potential steal of the draft is Peyton Wilson, the linebacker from NC State. Of course, there were talks about the medical. Specifically, he doesn't have an ACL. Some concerns similar to like a Miles Jack, yada, yada, yada. Is he going to be a second contract guy? He may not be. But at this point, at the end of the 3rd round, you do get a guy that has starter potential at the next level. You got to roll the dice and figure that shit out later. So when I look at those top 4 picks in particular, and especially those first 2 picks, I thought it was really, really good work for them. The New England Patriots. Drake May was my personal QB1 by just a little bit over Caleb Williams, and they got him at number 3. And you're going to say, some of you may not be huge on Drake May, and that's fine too, right? Like, I could see, I even conceded that in my scouting report for him that, I imagine there's quite a range of opinions here. Some are going to be like me and think he's the quarterback with the most upside. Others are going to say he's a disaster waiting to happen. But where I give the New England Patriots credit for is 2 things. First, they could have traded back here. And deep down, I don't give a fuck what anybody wants to say. Minnesota wanted Drake May. They wanted to get to this 3rd pick. And New England could have been justified in doing so. They could have sat there and say, hey, you know what? We want him. And, New England said, we'll take like a J.J. McCarthy or Michael Penix. We'll move back. We'll acquire additional draft pick capital. And we'll let you have Drake May. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is the simplest thing to do, which is just stay put and take the damn quarterback and build everything around him. And that's what they did. And then what impressed me about the New England Patriots draft approach, it was the anti-dumb dick Bill Belichick approach. They said, hey, we've got a young quarterback. We've got to build around him. You know how we do that? Is we invest multiple high picks in this draft on the fucking offense. The anti-Bill Belichick approach of, hey, Mac Jones needs a lot of help, so let's draft defenders in the first 3 rounds because I'm a fucking out-of-touch moron. I look at Polk and Baker, round 2, round 3 selections. They feel like they'll be wide receiver 2 and wide receiver 3 respectively for the Patriots. I look at Wallace and Robinson. They should both start on the offensive line by no later than 2025 and potentially even in 2024. And you're talking about 4 guys I anticipate on that offense to contribute around Drake Maye. This is laying a solid foundation. They've got a long way to go. Drake May's got a long way to go. And the New England Patriots have a long way to go. But they're at least starting on the right trajectory together. I look at the Houston Texans, and you're going to say, what was so impressive about their picks? It's not always just about the picks that you make and the players that you take. It's about approach. It's about philosophy. It's about strategy, draft game playing, draft execution. And you look at the Houston Texans, they turned pick 27 in this year's draft into the 3rd overall pick in Will Anderson in last year's draft. I think you would take that deal 100 out of 100 times. And then they turned pick 23 in this year's draft into number 42 and a 2025 second. So they continued to strengthen their draft position while borrowing from 2024 to help their team in 2023, 2024, and beyond. It's outstanding work. I look in terms of players that they actually took, and I say Lassiter, he's going to be a year 1 starter at corner. I think Fisher's going to be a year 1 starter at right tackle. Maybe allow them, as they were talking about in the NFL Network broadcast, to flip Titus Howard inside where they need him. And maybe Bullock will be a starter year 1 or year 2 as a safety as well. So they got some good layers here on day 2, and they played the draft game really, really well, and I've got to give them some credit for that. Then I look at the Arizona Cardinals. Again, you could have sat there and tried to trade back, and maybe could have traded back and rolled the dice. And sometimes the hardest thing to do is just stay put, be patient, and let the board fall to you and react accordingly. And in the first round, that's what they did. They took Marvin Harrison Jr., number 4 overall. Hard to argue with that pick for a team that was just lacking in offensive talent, lacking in big-time playmakers. They got one in Marvin Harrison Jr. And then later in round 1 to be able to take Darius Robinson from Missouri, they needed somebody that's versatile, that could play multiple positions along that defensive line. That's what they got here. And then they got lots of swings at the plate on days 2 and 3 because this is a team that needs a lot of help, right? Max Melton, Isaiah Adams, Trey Benson to me all have starter potential. I look at Taylor Demison and Xavier Thomas and think that they could be contributors early, even if it's in sub packages. This is really solid work by General Manager Monty Ossenfort. The challenge is you're still putting a lot of stock into Caleb Williams and I'm not getting there yet. Kyler Murray and what he can do. Has to give Cardinals fans some pause. But in terms of the approach to this year's draft, pretty good. But I think it's hard to refute that the big winners of the 2024 NFL draft were the Chicago Bears. Like, how could you? You could call that a biased homer pick all you want, but let's be real here. This isn't your typical Bears football draft. Because Ryan Poles did exactly what the fuck I wanted him to do last year, which is trade back big for number 1. They got themselves into a spot where they had the number 1 pick overall for the second year in a row, this time from Carolina, and then were able to be in a spot to be able to take Caleb Williams, who has elite franchise quarterback potential. Then to sit there at pick 9 and take Rome Odunze, this is a polished and all-around just really, really good wide receiver, type of wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 type of potential. And he's got wide receiver 1 potential. This is a really good receiver class, and Rome Odunze was a big part of that. But when you talk about the draft and how you utilize the draft to make your team better, it's not always just the direct draft picks. Montez Sweat at pick 40. That was that midseason trade. Even though I wasn't huge on it at the time, you have to acknowledge the reality of, trading a second round pick for Montez Sweat doesn't look so bad right now. When I look at the 3rd round, Kareem Abagaje, this is a guy that to me is similar to Braxton Jones a couple of years ago, except he has even more athletic upside. He might be able to play left tackle at some point. He might take over at guard in 2025 for Tevin Jenkins if he leaves via free agency, or Nate Davis if he continues to suck. Like, they swung for the fences here. Pick 110, they traded away for Keenan Allen. They brought him in knowing you're going to draft Caleb Williams, knowing you need to surround your young quarterback with as much help as possible. It suggests to me that Ryan Poles is learning from his mistakes of the past. And then pick 122, while some Bears fans hate this pick, I absolutely love this pick. Tory Taylor, the punter from Iowa. He changes games, folks. And you would think for the Chicago Bears and their fans, who have seen some fantastic special teams play throughout the years, they would understand the value that a great punter could bring. And Taylor will bring that value. He will kick it inside the 20-yard line. He will flip field position. He will pin teams deep, which makes it easier for your defense, makes opposing offenses having to go longer to score. Like, in a draft where you're looking at day 3, frankly, and saying the talent's not all that great, for the Bears to sit there and have one of the best punting prospects I've seen in 25 years be there on the board for them at 122, they're absolutely justified to take him, even if he is like 26, 27 years old. And then I look at pick 144. They originally traded this away to acquire Ryan Bates so they could pretend like he's a starting caliber center in the league. But then they reacquired that pick back, gave up a 4th rounder next year to go get Austin Booker from Kansas, an edge rusher with all types of upside. Like, that draft was really, really well done. Even if you hate the Bears, even if you want to shit on them, there's plenty of reason to do so. This year's draft is not fucking one of them. It just isn't. So those are some of my biggest winners. In terms of biggest losers, I talked about it the other night. The Carolina Panthers. I like some of the players they drafted. Leggett, Brooks, Sanders, all are designed to surround Bryce Young with help, and he certainly needs that. But this is still about last year's trade. And you can't just ignore that, folks. Like, when you look at the totality of the bigger picture, this is really bad. Would you rather have Bryce Young, or would you rather have Caleb Williams, DJ Moore, Tyreek Stevenson, Darnell Wright, DJ Moore? I put him in twice. Well, he's so fucking good, you might as well put him in twice. Tory Taylor, and a 2025 second-round pick. Which one of those would you have? Even if you remove DJ Moore from the equation, the answer is fucking obvious. But you put DJ Moore in that equation, it makes it even more incredibly lopsided. It makes it look like a historically awful trade for the Panthers. And then you think about how they took Brian Burns, a guy that the Rams reportedly, and I believe it, at one point a year or two ago, offered 2 future first-round picks to bring in. They end up trading him away for a 2nd and a 5th and a conditional 5th-round pick. Like, not good. Some of the players they took on Saturday, Sunday, or Friday, Saturday, okay. But it's much more than just that when you're talking about the draft. Woof, woof. Not good. The Las Vegas Raiders. I won't knock them huge for taking Brock Bowers at 13 because that's about appropriate based off of the level of talent and player. But this is also a team that just spent a 2nd-round pick on Michael Mayer last year. And how much do you think you're going to throw the fucking ball in Vegas? Are you really going to utilize both of these tight ends like this? Weird to me. You're really going to roll with O'Connell and Minshew at quarterback? Good luck with that. I thought there were better interior offensive linemen on the board, frankly, when they took JPJ from frickin' Oregon. I thought Frazier was better. I thought Beebe was better. My opinion, obviously. Others could feel differently, but I thought they passed up a better interior offensive lineman. And I thought the tackle from Maryland, DJ Glaze, was a sizable reach in round 3. Just wasn't a draft that I was really impressed with the Raiders. They kind of flew under the radar. Nobody's really talking about them, and that's probably for a good reason. And then you get to the Minnesota Vikings, and you know, it's hard to knock them too much for walking out of this draft with J.J. McCarthy and Dallas Turner, because Dallas Turner was being projected a lot to go 8 or 9 in this draft. He was there at 17 when Minnesota made the move up to get him. J.J. McCarthy, was some talk about him going in the top 4, going 6th, and they end up trading up just a bit to go get him at 10. They needed a quarterback. They needed a big-time edge rusher. They got both of those guys. But this is about draft approach, and in particular how much they've submarined their 2025 draft, and how Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah really seems to just not give a fuck about value charts and is okay with always paying a premium on these trades. And at some point in time, those chickens are going to fucking come home to roost. Like you look at moving up from 11 to 10 for J.J. McCarthy. He got punked out of picks 129 and 157. And you say, well, that's not that egregious. You made sure you got the guy. Yeah, that's true. But they probably should have just sat there. Was anybody really going to be that eager to jump them for J.J. at that point? I don't know about that. They got played. And then to move up to 17, you got to remember, they originally started off at pick 42 in round 2, and then they made the deal with the Texans to get back into round 1. They gave up 42, 167, 188, a 2025 second round pick, third round pick, and fourth round pick to get up to 17 for an edge rusher. And while a really good talent, that's really bad. It's incredibly lopsided value. And at some point in time, like I said, those chickens come home to roost. So it's not about knocking like Dallas Turner and J.J. McCarthy. It's that at some point in time, you got to be more judicious and diligent in how you distribute and protect those picks. And Kwesi just fucking burns through them like they're crack or something. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. So their 2025 draft in particular is really going to be bad because they have a first rounder, no second, no third, no fourth. I think they got 2 fifths and a seventh, and that is it. Yikes. But I think the big losers here were the Atlanta Falcons. I thought they reached for Orhorhoro in round 2. They gave up 79 to move up 8 spots to get him. Like Braylon Trice in round 3. Okay, that's about where he should have went. I don't consider that a huge steal, but that's about where he should have went. That was okay, right? But the pick of Michael Penix Jr. at number 8 is just indefensible at this point. I'll probably do a different video about this week just to talk about how dumb and ridiculous this is. But the Green Bay Packers model, this is not. You miss so many different things. The whole, well, maybe Kirk Cousins will be mad and he'll play it at MVP level. You're forgetting one key thing. When you're trying to make that argument with a Brett Favre doing it when Aaron Rodgers was drafted, playing it at MVP level, or Aaron Rodgers doing it when Jordan Love was drafted, those guys were going to go to the fucking Hall of Fame already. Aaron Rodgers had already been a 2-time league MVP. What the fuck are we talking about here? Kirk Cousins? Somebody in that front office, was General Manager Terry Fontenot, or was Arthur Blank insisting on a succession plan, or the team thinking because of the tampering shit with Kirk Cousins, which makes it even worse, that they might not have a first-round pick next year, that they might have to go ahead and get that succession plan at quarterback in now. Like, no matter what, it's just indefensible. Just indefensible. The earliest that Penix is slated, barring injury, to be starting is going to be 26 or 27 years old. For a team with a lot of needs that just went into free agency less than 2 months ago and backed up the Brinks truck for Kirk Cousins, gave him a massive contract, they turn around and invested a top 8 pick in a backup quarterback. That's dumb fucking process. I don't care what anybody says. Trade back, do something else. Don't do this. Ridiculous. Not even the fact that Michael Penix Jr. to me is overrated as hell by a lot of people. Even if he was a first-round graded talent. This is still really dumb. At least if you're going to do that, then go with J.J. McCarthy, because at least he's 21. So if he sits on the bench for 3 years, he's only 24. If Penix sits on the bench for 3 years, he'd be 27. It's unbelievably bad. Just not good process. No matter how much somebody might try to tell you otherwise, they're full of shit. You know it, and I know it. But anyways, those are who I thought were the winners and losers, the biggest ones anyways, from the 2024 NFL Draft. You can let me know what you think in the comment section below. I'll see you later.